and welcome. I'm Aisha Sindhu and you are watching Gravitas on WION, the only Indian channel with a global perspective that brings you the top stories from South Asia. Lots to talk about on the show tonight. But first up, here are the global headlines we're tracking at this hour. Taliban claims twin attacks in the Afghan capital Kabul, at least 3 dead in the strikes. Fierce resistance from the Islamic State in southwest Mosul. Amid Korean Peninsula tensions, US and South Korea begin joint military drills. Russia and China veto new UN sanctions on Syria over the use of chemical weapons. And the French presidential election candidate François Fillon placed under formal investigation into allegations that he paid family members for fake parliamentary jobs. Tonight, on the big discussions planned for Gravitas, Donald Trump addresses the joint session of the Congress. We discuss everything that he decided to speak about at his first ever. But first, Bangladesh has passed a child marriage restraint law, but its provisions could well be misused. The country has enacted the Child Marriage Restraint Act 2017 with a provision that can be seen as promoting child marriage. WION's Bangladesh Bureau Chief Saad Hamadi filed this report from Dhaka.
While many organizations have been trying to stop child marriage in Bangladesh, it is feared that an amendment to the Child Marriage Restraint Act could put things into reverse. The amended law stipulates the minimum age for marriage as 18 for females and 21 for males, but with the provision that marriage below those ages can be legalized with the consent of the legitimate guardian and the court.
Well, from what we've heard, the exception has been framed by the government in order to deal with certain special situations. But unfortunately, we don't really have much information in the public domain about what kind of special situations have been the reason to bring forth this exception. And I think without much transparency about the reasons, without much information about what kinds of special circumstances are being considered, the fear is that this exception could be used in all kinds of different situations to really water down the effect of the act. And it could be used in a way, you could conceive of situations where, given the extreme social stigma that prevails in our context, in situations of violence against women, particularly in situations of sexual violence and rape, you could conceive of a situation where parents or guardians try to get their daughter married off to a person even though he has committed rape or sexual assault on her, in order to reduce what they see as the social stigma. And they could then try and use this exception perhaps in those situations. So it seems to me that the exception might actually really go against a lot of the high-level commitment we've seen in Bangladesh to trying to end violence against women, particularly sexual violence. It may end up actually being a weapon which is being used by those who will further such forms of violence or cover up such forms of violence.
The government says it has made the changes keeping reality in mind and circumstances when abortion for young girls is not an option.
তারা মনে করছে আমরা বোধহয় এই ধারাটা দিয়ে সবাইকে ছাড় দিয়ে দিচ্ছি, আসলে সেটা নয়। আসলে সামাজিক বিষয়গুলোকে আমরা কিন্তু দেখছি, অবজার্ভ করছি, করেই আমরা কিন্তু এই বিষয়গুলো তুলে এনেছি। এমনকি আমরা ইউনিসেফের সাথে এই বিষয়গুলো নিয়ে আলোচনা করেছি। ধরেন আপনি প্রতিবন্ধীদের ক্ষেত্রে হয়তো আমরা একটু ছাড় দিব, যে তাদের ব্যাপারটা অনেক সময় প্রতিবন্ধীর অভিভাবকহীন থাকে, অনেক রকম সমস্যা তৈরি হয়। সেক্ষেত্রে একটা পরিবার বিয়ে হলে তাদের হয়তো সুবিধা হয়। তারপরে আপনার নদী ভাঙ্গন এলাকাগুলোতে অনেক রকমের জটিলতার সৃষ্টি হয়। দুর্যোগ এলাকা বিভিন্ন সময় মেয়েদেরকে নিরাপত্তা নিয়ে জটিল আকার। এই মুহূর্তে তো আমরা সব সমাধান করতে পারছি না, তার জন্য হয়তো কিছু কিছু ছাড় আমরা দিব, সেটা আমরা আলোচনা করেই আমরা দিব বিচারটা। বারবারই বলেন যে আমরা ওই হবে তাদের সাথে র্যাপিস্টের সাথে বিয়ে দিতে চাচ্ছি, আমরা তো এই কথা একবারও বলিনি। অভিভাবক এবং আদালতের সম্মতিক্রমে কন্যা শিশুর সর্বোত্তম স্বার্থে, কন্যার স্বার্থ যদি না থাকে, কন্যা যদি না চায়, তাহলে তো হবে না।
Without a clear specification for the exceptional circumstances, legal practitioners and child rights activists fear the provision will put child marriage under the carpet. They also fear that it will enable sex offenders to get off scot-free, as they could end up marrying their victims. This is more likely in rural areas where the stigma attached to rape goes deep and families of rape victims face ostracism and isolation. The child marriage bill comes as an irony when a country with high prevalence of child marriage opens a special provision that allows its continuity. In Dhaka, this is Saad Hammadi for WION.
So is Bangladesh's child marriage law open to exploitation? To discuss that question, we have joining us Leila Khonkar, Director of Child Protection Save the Children, joining us from Dhaka. Also with us on the show, giving us a perspective from Pakistan, is Qudsiya Sardar Mahmood, child rights activist, is joining in from Karachi. Thank you both, ladies, for being here on the show with us. Appreciate you taking out the time. I'll come to you first, Leila. This seems to be a bit of a shocking kind of legislation for Bangladesh. What are your thoughts on the provisions of this law?
Okay, thank you for your question. We are extremely concerned about this legislation with special provision because the special provision is left wide open. Setting parameters regarding the best interest of a child, special circumstances and age of minor will become difficult. And we are concerned that the potential for misuse is very high, as the consent of the child will not be considered by the court according to the provision. Only guardian's consent will be sought. And it's worth noting that almost all child marriages happen as a result of the decisions taken by the parents or guardians in Bangladesh. So we are concerned that the special clause will lead to an increase in child marriage in Bangladesh, and you know that the rate is already unacceptably high. Presently, many parents obtain fake birth registration certificates for their children in order to comply with the legal age of marriage. And it's only possible to imagine what will happen when there will be a special clause legally allowing marriage below the minimum age, which is presently 18 for girls and 21 for boys.
Right. Leila, another quick follow-up question to you on that is that you're talking about the fact that the law seems to give more rights to guardians and parents, and as you're mentioning, already a large number of marriages take place in Bangladesh where the child's age is below 18. So where in all of this, in this new legislation, where are we seeing the child's rights being looked at? Does this leave a great amount of space open for the exploitation of children's rights?
Absolutely. The special clause conflicts with the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, and Bangladesh has ratified it in 1989. We have National Child Policy 2011, National Children Act 2013. All these, anyone below 18 is a child. So by allowing the law being passed with the special provision, Bangladesh is allowing or legalizing child marriage. And as I have already mentioned, we know children have a right to be heard, to participate in decisions that affect their lives. In this special provision, only guardian's consent will be sought. No one will consult the child regarding his or her marriage. So it's a serious violation of children's rights, and it is a serious setback for the overall empowerment of girls and women. We are very proud that Bangladesh has made significant progress in terms of girls' education, women's empowerment, economic opportunities, and all that. And government and civil society organizations have been really working very hard to achieve this status. Unfortunately, this legislation has the potential to reverse all the hard-won progress in terms of girls' and women's education, health, and economic, social, and political participation.
Right.
This also affects the boys, because now the special provision will allow marriage of boys below 21. So
Right.
that will affect their education and employment opportunities.
Okay, so we have to look at both genders, of course. Can't be looking at just girls' rights. There are young boys involved as well. Let's go across to Qudsiya on that note as well. Qudsiya, how is the situation when it comes to Pakistan on this issue? I'm certain that Pakistan too faces issues like India and Bangladesh when it comes to child marriage. What are the current practices in the region when it comes to the marriage of young children, especially girls?
Actually, it's not, different from India and Bangladesh. The basic problems are same. And in Pakistan, you know that we are facing lots of problems due to child marriages. And according to the recent estimates, 21% of the girl population of Pakistan underwent through this trauma of child marriages before the age of 18. So the other circumstances are same, that we have this national law which is from 1929, and it restricts the age for the girls for 16 years, and for boys it's 18 years. So we are struggling hard to change this law, to amend this law since ages, but still we are struggling with it due to various reasons. And one of the basic reason is, very much strong resistance from the religious scholars and religious sects.
Right.
So, yeah.
Leila, is that common in Bangladesh as well? Would it be safe to assume that there could be some sort of resistance from religious outfits and groups when it comes to dictating the correct quote-unquote age to for a girl or a boy to get married?
It's not that straightforward. I think it's mostly like societal pressure. We have this law, Child Marriage Restraint Act, since 1929, since the British period. Still, the child marriage rate is extremely high, like that's 64%. And there are several reasons. One is the poor implementation of the law, and another is huge social acceptance of child marriage. So, and parents also have lower aspirations for their girls. So, they think the caring and reproductive roles are quite central to women's life, and whenever they tend to find a suitable groom, they want to arrange the marriage even when it's below 18. So I would think that this has mostly to do with the social norms surrounding the role of women and girls, as well as, that creates the social acceptance. And with this special clause, unfortunately, people will have more excuses to marry off their daughters below that age of 18, because they may come up with excuses that it's in the best interest of the girl, when the best interest is not well defined.
All right. Qudsiya, in fact, that is a common refrain we hear in India as well, especially when there are instances of rape or unwanted pregnancies that get involved. The ludicrous sort of excuse given sometimes is that to save the honor of the girl, it's better for her to be married to her rapist or the person who impregnates her. But in all of this, is specifically talking about Bangladesh's new legislation. What happens to the child's rights in all of this? As I see it, it seems like a minor girl gets raped, then her family could marry her off to a rapist. In what do they see as justice to the girl? But the child, it is at the end of the day that suffers through all of it. Let's have you weigh in on that.
Yeah, you're right, because in Pakistan too, we face this challenge that girls are married to their rapists, because even when the civil society or the people, they registered the FIR with the against the culprits, there is a lot of societal and family pressures to, patch up. So most of the cases we actually practice here or also end up with patch-up, marrying the same rapist or even the same family. So this is very common in Pakistan too, and it's obviously violates the law, and we cannot imagine the psychosocial stress or trauma the girl has to go through while she is raped by the same perpetrators, and then she has to marry the same person and to live there. So it's unimaginable thing, and actually unable to describe the trauma the girls are facing right now in Pakistan too. And we are in solidarity with Bangladesh that these laws should not be like this, and they have to repeal that law.
Absolutely. Obviously, the situation seems to be quite common as far as the South Asia region goes. I'm going to ask Leila to stay on with us. Qudsiya, thank you for joining us and weighing in with the Pakistan side of things and your perspective on the show. I'm going to have to move forward a little bit on the show because the UNICEF has reported in 2014 that 65% of girls in Bangladesh are married before they turn 18, and 29% of them are married before they are even 15 years old. Saad Hamadi, our Dhaka bureau chief, has this report.
Brishti was 16 when she got married to the man she had an affair with. They both worked at a garment factory in Dhaka. 2 years later, her husband left her. By then, she had already conceived a daughter. At 19, she is a single mother.
আমি যখন আমার আব্বু আম্মুর কাছে ছিলাম তখন আমি আগে চাকরি করতাম গার্মেন্টসে। তা গার্মেন্টসে চাকরি করার পরে আমার একটা ছেলে পছন্দ করছে, তা আমার আব্বু আম্মু আবার রাজি ছিল না। তা আমি আবার একটা সিদ্ধান্ত নিলাম কি, যদি আমার আব্বু আম্মু যদি বিয়ে যদি না দেয় তাহলে আমরা দুইজন পলায়ে যা বিয়ে করব। 16 বছরে আমার বিয়ে হয়েছে, 18 বছরে আমি সন্তানের মা হয়েছি, আর আমার বয়স 19 চলে। আর আমার হাজবেন্ড আমার 19 বছরের পর আমার হাজবেন্ড আমার ফালায় হয়ে গেছে গা। তারপরে আমার হাজবেন্ড যখন ছিল তখন আমার কোনো কষ্ট ছিল না, আমার হাজবেন্ড যখন চলে গেছে তখন থেকে আমার মেয়েটার নিয়ে আমার খুব কষ্ট, আর আমি কোনো চাকরি করতে পারি না।
Brishti represents 65% of girls in Bangladesh who are married before they turn 18, according to a 2014 report of the UNICEF. 29% of girls are married in the country before they are 15. Brishti was married at an age when she was not legally eligible, and efforts were still being put into discouraging the harsh reality she has brought upon her. How a provision to allow marriage below 18 in the Child Marriage Restraint Act 2017 will improve this reality is impossible to comprehend. In Dhaka, this is Saad Hamadi for WION.
Let's go across to Leila Khondkar, who joins us from Dhaka. Leila, what sort of efforts, if any, are on to protest this legislation right now in Bangladesh?
In fact, the civil society organizations have come together. Save the Children is part of Child Rights Advocacy Coalition and Girls Not Bride Coalition. Both have sent press statements. Just today, there was a press conference that was jointly organized by Social Action Committee. That's a platform of 70 women and child rights organizations, Child Rights Advocacy Coalition and Girls Not Brides. All of us called on the government to reconsider the special clause. Tomorrow, Child Rights Advocacy Coalition is going to organize another press conference, bringing the child rights perspective more rigorously into the whole debate. Print and electronic media have been protesting against this, and I think everyone that are involved in the development sector of the country, we are extremely concerned and raising our voice. We are trying to mobilize public opinion through media, different types of media. So the movement will continue until we find a reasonable solution. We have been working on this for the last 3 years. And unfortunately, it's very disappointing for us that we have not been able to repeal the special clause from the Child Marriage Restraint Act. But we are not giving up. We are hoping that the government will listen to our voice, will listen to children's voice, and will repeal this special clause.
All right, stay with us, Leila. My colleague, WION's Bureau Chief from Bangladesh, Saad Hamadi, is also joining in on the broadcast now. So, Saad, what have you been hearing in terms of reactions that have come in on this law? Of course, Leila representing one voice that is anti these new clauses within the legislation. But is that the view overall, or are there people, vehemently in support of this new legislation?
Actually, it's very surprising. I've talked to all legal experts and rights activists, and all of them have voiced the same way, that they're equally shocked by the fact that this government has gone ahead with a provision in this law which, in a way, promotes child marriage. And all these efforts that rights groups have put together to reduce child marriage in the country through incentivizing the poverty-ridden community with education and other forms of economic benefits and incentives will all go in vain if this provision comes to effect, basically. That's already in the process. I've talked to the minister who's responsible for this, for child rights and children and women affairs, and they have said that they have done this provision keeping in mind the communities that might be prone to disasters and communities with special needs. That's just an example, but there is no clear specification given where this law would be applicable, which also indicates that in many of these circumstances where there is violation, sexual abuse, and there's a social stigma attached to it, the families would be more prone to giving into this child marriage, and there would be a legitimacy to it as well.
Right.
Also to note, Aisha, is the fact that there is an existing law about Women and Children Repression Act, which says that any sexual activity between a male and a female, where the female is below 16 years of age, with or without marriage in Bangladesh, would be tantamount to rape, committing rape. Now, with that law being in practice or in effect, this new law creates more ambiguity and confusion to the fact that which law will override the other, because under the current circumstance, with this special provision coming in, any marriage consented by a court and the legal guardian below 18 will be considered legitimate.
All right, so there seems to be a sort of inherent dichotomy in both those legislations, Saad, but also, there's a whole host of issues involved in countries like India, Pakistan and Bangladesh. For instance, stalking and predatory behavior, demonstrated by men toward young women and young girls. Do you feel that with this new legislation, men might feel more empowered to, carry out stalking sort of behavior, and B, that women might choose not to speak up because they feel that if they do speak up, the chances are their parents might just tell them to marry the very same person that is, is stalking them?
The point being that, given what you've mentioned, there is every possibility of women giving into, succumbing to this kind of a situation, the stalking being there as well. But in a patriarchal society, and particularly within societies where there is a substantial margin of rural community, they have that perception of getting their daughters married off at an early age to either get rid of burden, as they put it, or for the benefit of the daughter. But now with this law coming into practice, this would be more happening in the communities.
All right. Leila, do you feel, you were mentioning that there are efforts on to protest the law and that special clause that's been included. Do you think that a fresh look at the law will take place if there are widespread protests that continue against it?
We are hoping. We still hope, because we really cannot reverse the progress. So we still hope that the government will listen to us, listen to the voices of the children. And just one point, I was listening to the arguments in favor of the legislation, like the solution to sexual abuse and like unwanted pregnancies and all that is not child marriage. We really need to establish a functional child protection system in the country according to the Children Act 2013. Then we can address all the issues that have been given as excuse by the government in favor of the special clause. all we need is a functional child protection system that will protect the rights of girls and boys of this country. Marrying of a girl who was raped or who was sexually harassed is not the solution, and it's a serious violation of children's rights, and it legitimizes sexual violence, which is totally unacceptable. So we still hope that the government will reconsider the special clause.
Right. Leila, if I can also ask you, what sort of efforts are underway currently in Bangladesh to educate young children and young girls specifically about their rights? The law aside, are they aware of what is right, what is wrong? Is that an issue that NGOs that you are associated with also face?
Oh, definitely. Organizations like Save the Children, in partnership with many national NGOs, and there are other international NGOs working on children's rights, women's rights, we are doing many grassroots level activities, community-based activities where we facilitate.
All right, we seem to have lost our audio connection with Leila, but we've also run out of time for this segment of Gravitas. I'd like to thank both Leila Khonkar and my colleague Saad Hamadi for joining us on the broadcast with their perspectives. It's time for a quick break, but when we come back, we'll be talking about none other than Donald Trump and his first address to the Congress, which happened earlier today. Stay tuned for that.